Welcome dear viewers to the video on extended release or modified release, drug delivery system, rational and risk assessment. So in this video we are going to see what is the basic purpose for making the MR system and how the risk is assessed. Also we will see how the product is developed and what are the challenges. So considering the modified release formulations or extended release formulations, the basic is rationale for the design. Steps for designing the MR formulation is included in the video. Also, a risk assessment is covered, and then what is the way for designing the MR formulation is included. I suggest you and request you to watch the other videos available in the extended release series, like extended release drug delivery system for oral route part 1 and types of ER systems part 2, and one more video is there which gives you the information about differences between the MR formulation design like sustained release, modified release, controlled release, extended release, delayed release or prolonged release. So here in this video we are going to consider mainly the extended release formulations. See, all the terminologies like SR, ER, PR, MR, CR, all these are covered in the modified release terminology. But they have some differences and some similarities. So if you go through these videos on the channel, you will have good understanding about this ER formulation topic. First is a rationale for designing the MR formulation. See, whenever there is modification to the release of the API from the formulation for oral route, that is called as modified release formulation, because we are changing the rate of release. And for IR formulations, there is no requirement or there is no alteration for the release of API. But in modified release formulation, the release is altered by making some changes to the formulation, like by controlling the release through different mechanisms and by making the formulation such that the release will not happen at once. So MR formulations are to be designed for better therapy, that means better therapeutic outcome or clinical effect of the API, and by improving efficacy, safety and patient compliance we can achieve the better therapy. So basic rationale is to have improved efficacy, improved safety and improved patient compliance. MR design depends on the physicochemical properties of the drug substance, biological properties of the drug substance and clinical properties of the drug substance. Selection of the proper MR formulation design and then clinical benefit of the MR formulation design. So the effect or the action of the MR formulation depends on the clinical benefit, and if clinical benefit is there, that means there is a improved efficacy, safety and patient compliance. Sometimes the formulations are good, they are designed good, they have the good efficacy, safety and all these things, but only because of the patient compliance the therapy is not up to the mark, or the therapy or therapeutic outcome of the treatment is not achieved. So to get the better efficacy, to get the better safety, patient compliance is important. MR formulations reduce the dosing frequency, reduce the side effects, reduce the GI side effects, or improves the GI tolerance, so that in the chronic therapy as well as in the acute therapy, the patient compliance is improved, and that's why the better clinical outcome can be achieved by MR formulations. So this is the main rationale for MR formulation design. Now coming to the steps for designing the MR formulation. See, the MR formulation should have a rationale. It should have a answer to some questions. That means what is going to be achieved by making the MR formulation. So the MR formulation depends on identification of the clinical need or potential requirement of the MR design. So it is like problem statement. What is the problem with the existing formulation, or what is the problem with the existing formulation design or technology or treatment? Then setting the target for fulfilling the need by MR design. Once you observe that this is the problem with the IR formulation or with the treatment, then you can set the target, and it is to be fulfilled by making the MR design. Setting the in vivo performance target. So to achieve the clinical benefit, what should be the in vivo performance target? It may be plasma concentration of the drug, it may be a release of the drug in the intestinal segment or specific part like colonic delivery or intestinal delivery or bypassing the stomach, or having the extended type of release or sustained type of release. Sometimes the slow release can be achieved, and that becomes the target for in vivo performance. Risk assessment of MR designed for ADME of the drug. So absorption, distribution, metabolism and elimination of the drug has great impact onto the MR design. So I have made a separate video on this topic, like drug properties for ideal drug properties for MR design. So it is given in the part 1 of this video series. So you can go there and see and learn about the ideal drug properties. Then experimentation to assess the challenges and requirements to hit the target. And the target is what? It is the clinical outcome. So experimentation is required to be done. Whatever the experiments are performed for having the MR design or MR profile, that time the challenges to be clearly understood and mitigated, so that MR formulation will have the typical release profile as it is required for the clinical benefit. Now coming to the risk assessment for MR formulation. So risk assessment is done based on to the physicochemical nature of the drug, biopharmaceutical nature of the drug, pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of the drug, then a release and absorption requirement for the drug. If the drug is getting slowly absorbed, that time your release should be slow. The release rate should be slower than the absorption rate. That means whatever the drug is released, it will get absorbed. Otherwise, the formulation will behave like IR type of formulation where the dose is totally released and absorption takes the time. So, drug release versus drug absorption requirement should be understood in detail and its risk should be assessed. Plasma drug level for pharmacological response. So, what is the plasma drug level required to have the pharmacological response is to be assessed. Gastric residence time for formulation. It is residence time and absorption of the API. What will be the gastric residence time? The residence time may be in the stomach if you are working onto the floating delivery system or gastroretentive or mucoadhesive. And what will be the absorption rate of API which is released from that formulation? So that risk is required to be assessed. Suitability of API dose, solubility and absorption rate. What is the dose of the API? What is the solubility of the API? And how it is going to have impact onto the formulation design? That risk is required to be assessed. And based on that risk, suitable formulation is required to be selected. Finally, the risk of dose dumping should be assessed onto the final formulation. Dose dumping means the release of more than the required API at certain time point. Dose dumping may be due to the effect of food, effect of some gastric diseases or conditions, or it may be due to the intake of alcohol. Then coming to the setting, QTPP and CQS. So once you have the prototype, you can set the quality target product profile and critical quality attributes. But in the initial phase, the risk assessment depends on to the API and its characteristics. Now coming to the designing the MR formulation. So first of all, evaluation of the formulation should be done. The formulations with different mechanism of release to be manufactured and tested. The formulations with different release rate should be studied. Then different manufacturing processes should be evaluated. Prototype formulation screening for target in vivo profile is to be performed. Development of IVIVC for prototype formulation is to be done. So these are the terminologies I have included here for designing the MR formulation. All these steps for designing the formulation depend on to the API and depend on to the clinical target. So many of the times these steps will remain similar for the formulation. Sometimes the prototype is screened in the earliest phase. Sometimes the prototype is finalized based on to some in vivo or bioavailability studies, or in the research phase or early research phase, the prototypes are screened on the basis of clinical outcome in the patients. So this is the steps for or roadmap for designing the MR formulations. So in this video, we have seen what is the rationale, what is the risk, and what are the steps for designing the MR formulation. See, MR formulation is a broad term, and in this MR formulation terminology, the delayed release, prolonged release, sustained release, extended release, and some other type of releases profiles like time release or chronotherapeutic formulations are coming. So whenever you talk about the modified release formulations, consider that it is a broad terminology. Delayed release also comes under the modified release type of formulations, because in delayed release the stomach is bypassed for the release and the drug release happens in the intestine. So that lag time period is there, and that's why the term delayed release is given. And as we have altered the release of air formulation by some enteric coating or delayed release coating or gastro-resistant coating, the term modified release is given. I hope I have explained the terminologies, and I also hope you might have got good information from this video. I thank you everyone. I am very thankful to everyone for watching the videos and giving the comments and asking the questions. Thank you for watching the video, and please share this video with your friends and colleagues. Thank you.